Mafia boss's dead fiancé had a twin sister he never knew until she showed up at her funeral. I didn't come back to Seattle for nostalgia. I came back for a death. 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days since the night my twin sister Emily and I said words we could never take back. I'd built a quiet life in Berlin, convincing myself that distance and work could dull the ache. But then an email arrived, short, sterile, devastating. We regret to inform you that Emily Voss passed away in a single vehicle collision on Aurora Avenue. Funeral service Friday at 2 p.m. I read it 3 times before I noticed my hands shaking. The taxi stopped in front of St. Mary's Cathedral under a gray drizzle. I paid the driver, stepped out, and let the cold wind slap my face. The air smelled of salt and wet asphalt, the lake breathing somewhere nearby, alive while half of me was gone. The driver asked if I was all right. I nodded, catching my reflection in the mirror. Pale hair pulled back, eyes red from crying, a stranger staring back. Inside, the world felt sealed in wax and candle smoke. The door closed behind me, cutting off the rain. I thought I'd just sit quietly for a while, then leave unnoticed. But the moment I saw the casket draped in white lilies, my body froze. Emily lay inside. My reflection, same bones, same mouth, same fragile outline, except she no longer breathed. My throat tightened. My palms were slick with sweat. As I walked down the aisle, I felt eyes turn toward me. They weren't the faces from Emily's world, not the painters, not the baristas or street performers she used to photograph in Fremont. These people wore power like perfume, tailored suits, dark silk dresses, whispers of old money. This wasn't her crowd. This was someone else's version of Emily. When I reached the front rows, the priest's voice faltered. The air shifted. A woman gasped, dropping her prayer book, trembling as she pointed at me. "Emily, oh God, Emily!" A chill shot through me. We'd joked once that if one of us vanished, the other could take her place, and no one would know. Now the joke had become prophecy. Gasps spread through the cathedral. Every head turned, every mouth formed her name, Emily. And then he stood. From the first pew, a man rose, tall, composed, dangerous in his stillness. His gaze cut through the candlelight and pinned me in place. Luca Moretti. I knew him before he spoke. The press called him the man behind the world's private defense empire, a strategist turned billionaire security magnate, and Emily's fiancé. I'd seen him in photographs beside senators and soldiers, on all steel and control. But the man standing before me now looked haunted, as if he'd seen a ghost. "Emily?" he said, voice raw and breaking, one word carved from disbelief. The cathedral fell silent. I stopped a few feet away, heart pounding, grief swelling like water behind my ribs. "No," I said quietly, forcing the word through the tightness in my chest. "I'm not Emily, I'm Clara Voss, her twin sister." The sentence cracked through the silence like thunder. Whispers erupted, English, Italian, German, colliding in a low storm that filled the vaulted space. I heard none of it, only the sound of my own heartbeat, frantic and painfully alive. Luca didn't move. His eyes flickered with something raw, fear, hope, disbelief, before he stepped back, as though the world had lost its gravity. I knew I shouldn't be there, but I had to see her one last time, because silence had stretched between us for 3 years, and I refused to let that be the last thing she ever heard from me. I lifted my gaze toward the casket. toward the face that mirrored mine, and whispered silently, "I'm home, Emily. Late, but home." I don't remember how long I sat in the last pew after the crowd was gone. When the final chime faded, only the dying candles and the scent of wilting lilies remained. People say time heals all wounds, but the truth is, it only teaches you how deep they go. For 3 years, I'd avoided Emily, convinced that silence was safer than forgiveness. Now there was nothing left to forgive. I stepped outside just as dusk began to fall. The sky was pewter gray, drizzle breaking into the marble steps, dissolving like nameless memories. I was heading toward my hotel when a voice stopped me. "Miss Voss," I turned. Luca Moretti stood beneath the archway, stripped of his composure. Rain slicked his shoulders, darkened his hair. His eyes held something I couldn't yet name. Suspicion, confusion, and maybe guilt. "We need to talk," he said. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, my voice flat. "I just came to bury my sister. It wasn't an accident." 4 words that hollowed the air between us. He stepped closer, and I caught the faint scent of smoke and wet cedar. "Emily worked for me," he said quietly. "But a few weeks before she died, she changed. She canceled meetings, ignored calls. I had someone follow her. A few days later, she was gone." "What are you suggesting?" "I think she found something she wasn't supposed to." The wind lifted my coat, sharp and cold against my skin. I remembered the last emails Emily sent me, vague lines about a deal gone wrong, people you shouldn't trust. I'd assumed it was her way of dramatizing life, as she always did, but now the pieces began to align into something darker. Luca studied me. "Did she tell you anything?" "I don't know anything." "Are you sure, Clara?" His tone slid under my skin, too calm to be harmless. I stepped back. "I'm not part of your world. I write code. I don't spy." A faint, tired smile crossed his face. "That's exactly why she trusted you." Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating his face for an instant, sharp lines, weary eyes. "Why should I trust you?" I asked. "Because I was the last person to see Emily alive." The world stilled between us. Rain thickened. Cars passed in the distance. My pulse stumbled. Luca pulled a card from his coat pocket. "If you really want to know what happened," he said, "come to my lake house tonight, alone." He pressed the card into my hand, his fingers cold, brief. "Don't tell anyone. Emily tried to do the right thing. She died for it." Then he turned and walked into the rain, disappearing like a shadow, dissolving into fog. I stood there, clutching the card until it bent in my fist. Not an accident. The phrase echoed through me, steady and cruel. Back at the hotel, neon lights from the street painted tremors across the walls. I sat on the bed and opened my laptop, digging through old messages, archived files, fragments of conversations with Emily. The last text she ever sent read, "No one can be trusted." I didn't know what she'd gotten herself into, but I knew one thing for sure. If she died chasing the truth, I couldn't look away. Whether it was Luca Moretti or the shadows behind him, I would find out what killed my sister. I didn't go to Lake Union that night. Instead, I spent the next hours walking through the city, trying to remember the sound of Emily's voice. But everywhere, in the rain, in the damp breath of Seattle, I kept hearing the same echo, "Not an accident." And that single thought carried me into the party that evening where her name lingered among strangers wearing borrowed smiles. I've never liked elegant parties. But that night, under the dim gold lights of a lakeside hotel on Lake Union, I found myself walking into a world that didn't belong to me, the world of Emily, or at least the version of her I thought I knew. After the funeral, Seattle was still drenched in rain, but here men in tuxedos and women in silk gowns seemed untouched by weather or grief. They talked about tech startups, venture funding, and global markets. Luca Moretti's name floated through the air with a mix of reverence and caution. Part of me wanted to leave. The other part knew I couldn't, because something in this room full of laughter felt terribly wrong. I held a glass of champagne just to have something to do with my hands. The light was too bright, the noise too polished, everything too far from reality. Emily had always hated places like this, and yet these were the people who claimed to mourn her. I scanned the crowd, perfect smiles, measured laughter. I was the only imperfection in a flawless photograph. "First time here?" a woman's voice asked beside me. I turned to see a soft-eyed woman in her 30s, brown hair and calm poise. "I'm Rachel Ung," she said, offering her hand. "I worked with Emily at the Aurora Arts Foundation." The name stopped me. Emily worked there? Rachel nodded. She was managing a photography project funded by Moretti's company. Officially, it was for charity. Unofficially, I think it was something else. "What do you mean?" She was scared toward the end, always looking over her shoulder, checking her phone. I once found her crying after a call from an unknown number. When I asked, she said, "I've gone too far." The words hit me like ice. I remembered the last message Emily sent me. No one can be trusted. I dismissed it as her usual drama. Now it sounded like a warning. Near the bar, two men spoke in Italian, low, clipped. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but instinct took over. One of them said Albanese, Albanians, then the phrase leva attraverso la sorella, leverage through the sister. My pulse stuttered. They were talking about Emily, or about me. I kept my posture calm, but my fingers trembled against the glass. In my mind, fragments began to align. Luca's rain-soaked words, the leather notebook, the strange tension at the funeral. Emily hadn't died by chance. She'd been silenced by people who were right here, smiling, drinking, pretending to grieve. Then came the voice behind me, low, familiar, and edged with something dangerous. "You shouldn't be here alone." I turned. Luca Moretti stood there, tall and composed, but his eyes gave him away. He looked like a man who'd realized too late that control couldn't save him. The black suit, the dark tie. He seemed like the only still point in a room spinning out of balance. "I don't think we have anything to discuss," I said. "Not here," he replied, glancing around. "They're watching." "Who are they?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a card. A single handwritten address in bold black ink. 17 Shoreline Drive. "Tonight, 9 o'clock, alone." I took it, the paper cold against my skin. "And if it's a trap?" "You're smarter than that, Clara," he said quietly. "And I think you want the truth more than you want safety." Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd, swallowed by light and music, leaving me standing there, heart hammering like a countdown. I looked down at the card, the ink still fresh, the letters sharp enough to cut. Tonight, 9 p.m. Somewhere behind me, music swelled again. Glasses clinked, laughter rose, but the sounds came from far away now, blurred through the haze of realization. I knew I would go, not because I trusted him, but because of Emily. And because deep down I could feel it, her death was only the beginning. I don't remember how I drove to Luca's estate. Only that when I arrived, night had swallowed the lake, and light from the house stretched across the water like liquid fire. The air was damp and metallic, the wind heavy with pine. Something in the stillness made my pulse quicken. Not fear exactly, but the instinct that whatever waited behind that door would change everything. The gate opened before I could press the bell. A camera swiveled, metal groaned, and the path of white gravel led me to a stone mansion, glowing faintly gold. The place was both beautiful and lifeless, as if luxury itself had frozen over. Inside, the scent of oak, leather, and whiskey clung to the air. Luca stood by the fireplace, glass in hand, unsurprised to see me. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. Firelight carved shadows across his face, catching a small scar near his temple I hadn't noticed before. "You're on time," he said, voice low, deliberate. "I knew you'd come." "I didn't come because I trust you," I said, watching the flames. "I came because of Emily." "As did I." He set down his glass, met my eyes. "She was my fiancée." The words struck like shattering glass. What? We were to marry last June, but she found something inside the company. Hidden transactions linked to international crime networks. She begged me to stop. Stop what? Stop working with people I believed were legitimate partners, he said tightly. But I didn't listen. When I finally understood, it was too late. Emily started collecting evidence, sending data to someone anonymous. She said if anything happened to her, that person would know what to do. My breath caught. That person was me. She never said a name, but you're the only one capable of decrypting what she left. He handed me a slim silver laptop, cracked at the corner. Emily's. My pulse hammered as I placed it on the table, fingers trembling slightly as I powered it on. The screen came to life, one folder only, labeled EV01. Inside, nothing but coded strings, not a simple password. A symmetrical encryption pattern, advanced, deliberate. A language she and I had created years ago. I typed the first sequence, then the second, my hands remembering before my mind did. The screen unlocked, blooming open into a flood of data. Photos, transactions, government emails. Then an image, Emily and Luca at a conference. Her smile radiant, her eyes haunted. I looked up. "You knew about these transfers?" "I did," he said hoarsely, "and I tried to hide them, but Emily wouldn't stay silent." "And they killed her." He didn't answer. His gaze was dark, heavy as the lake outside. "I can't prove it, but I know who gave the order. He doesn't just run a company, he commands a network that spans continents." For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see the fracture inside him, guilt and fury bound together, twisting. "So what do you want from me?" "I want you to finish what Emily started. She encrypted her investigation journal. I can't open it, but you can." He stepped closer and laid a worn leather journal on the table, bound by a thin cord. The firelight gleamed across the embossed letter E. "Only you can unlock it." I stared at it, heart pounding. "Why me? Because I look like her." "No," he said quietly. "Because you're the only one brave enough to face the truth." The silence between us thickened. Part distrust, part dangerous pull, neither of us could deny. I didn't know if I feared him or trusted him, maybe both. Outside, the wind rose, sweeping across the lake. I opened the journal, but before I could read a single line, a shrill alarm tore through the air. Sirens wailed through the hall. Luca spun toward the control panel, eyes narrowing. "What the hell?" I began, but the crack of gunfire cut me off. The sound echoed through the stone walls, sharp and close. Figures moved outside, shadows slicing through the lights. Luca's expression hardened. "Get to the basement." "Who are they?" "Not the time to ask." Another shot shattered the window. I dropped instinctively as glass rained around my feet. In that chaos, I realized one terrible truth. Whatever game Emily had started, it had already claimed her, and now it had come for us. Everything happened too fast to think. Gunfire split the air, echoing through the walls like thunder trapped inside stone. Paintings crashed, glass shattered, the smell of gunpowder mixing with charred wood and iron. Luca grabbed my arm hard, pulling me from the room. His eyes were dark, his voice clipped and urgent. "This way." We ran down a narrow corridor behind the fireplace, the wall sliding open to reveal a hidden passage. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting pale blue over raw concrete. The gunfire grew distant, but not gone. Above us, boots pounded against marble floors. Luca sealed the steel door behind us, locks clicking into place. "They won't breach this for a few minutes," he said, checking his weapon. "We head for the panic room." I nodded, breathing hard, but thinking clear. Years in cybersecurity had trained me to respond with logic, not panic. I scanned the corridor, a hidden camera, grease marks, the scent of oil. "Someone's used this passage recently," I said quietly. "The hinges are freshly lubricated." Luca gave me a sharp look. "You notice everything." "I prefer not to die because I missed a detail," I muttered. The hallway led to a vault-like door. Luca pressed his palm to the scanner. The lock released with a hiss. The room inside was small but impregnable. Steel walls, independent ventilation, 6 monitors covering every inch of the house. I sat before the console, eyes on the main feed. "How many entrances?" I asked. 5, 2 with heat sensors." "They're moving in formation," I pointed. "Not amateurs, 3 teams, 2 flanking, 1 heading for the tunnel." Luca cursed softly in Italian. "Albanese hired mercenaries." "How would they know the layout?" His face went still. "They couldn't unless someone inside gave it to them," I finished. On one monitor, a bullet tore through the lens. The screen went dark. I switched views, zoomed in on a man with a hawk tattoo on his neck. The same emblem from Emily's files. My chest tightened. "These are the ones who killed her," I whispered. "Not tonight," Luca growled. Gunfire flared again on the main floor. His guards fought back, smoke billowing through the halls. Shouts, glass breaking, the dull thud of bodies hitting tile. I forced myself to focus on the feeds, not the fear clawing at my ribs. An explosion shook the floor. "West entry's breached," I said. "They're closing in." Luca turned, gun ready. "Stay here, I can help," I cut in. "I can see their movements. You go out blind, you'll die." Our eyes locked, cold, defiant, and in that second, something shifted. A flicker of trust, sharp and fragile. "Fine," he said. "Guide me." I tracked the cameras, voice steady. 2 by the stairs, 1's reloading, move now. Luca slipped out, his footsteps fading. Gunfire crackled through the speakers, then silence. Clear, his voice rasped through the comm. "First floor secure." I exhaled, shaking. My body hummed with adrenaline. When he returned, his shirt was streaked with blood, not his. He dropped the gun on the table, chest heaving. "They knew the shortcut," he said. "That's no coincidence." "Who gave them the plans?" "There's only one man smart enough to hide the trail." His voice turned bitter. Silvio DeSantis. The name cut through the air. I remembered the code embedded in Emily's files. Silv. Back then, it made no sense. Now it did. She marked it, I said, opening the laptop. Every document started with Silv. It was a signature. Luca's jaw clenched, rage and grief tangled in his expression. He was my right hand. I saved him. He sold us out. You're certain? More than ever. Outside, alarms began to fade. On the monitors, guards dragged bodies from the courtyard, smoke curling into the night. The mansion looked like the aftermath of a war. Luca's composure cracked for the first time, exhaustion softening his features. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I couldn't keep you safe. I don't need saving, I replied, though my voice trembled. I just need the truth. He met my eyes and something passed between us. Quiet, heavy, real. Then maybe, he said, I finally trust you. Fog rolled over the lake outside, swallowing the lights until only shadows remained. In that steel room, surrounded by silence and smoke, I realized something simple and terrifying. Trust doesn't start with promises. It starts with gunfire. Night fell over the mansion like a heavy curtain, thick with the smell of smoke and gunpowder. Outside, wind rippled across the lake, scattering broken reflections of light through the shattered windows. Inside, silence settled like dust, the kind that comes after chaos when you realize it isn't really over. Luca sat before the glowing monitors, the cold blue light sharpening his features into stone. I stood behind him, watching streams of data roll across the screen. These transfers, he said hoarsely, moved through accounts in Kosovo, then Zurich. 3 years, $12 million. All authorized by one person, I murmured. He zoomed in on the sender's name, Silvio DeSantis. The air thickened. I could hear him breathing, slow and jagged. I trusted him, Luca said, gave him everything, the keys to my empire. You couldn't have known, I whispered. No, he said flatly, but I could have smelled betrayal, and this time I let it rot. The intercom buzzed. Franco's voice came through. Silvio DeSantis is asking to meet. He says he has information on Victor Krasniki. That name twisted something inside me. Victor, the Albanian kingpin Emily had tried to expose. You're going to see him? I asked. Of course, Luca said, his tone edged with steel. But I can't promise he'll leave alive. I touched his arm. Don't let rage blind you. If he knows Victor's location, this could be your only chance. Or another trap. Or the ending Emily died for, I said softly. He hesitated, torn between fury and reason. Finally, he nodded. He wants to trade his life for Victor's. Fine, I'll listen. And if he's telling the truth, then he lives until Victor doesn't. The meeting took place near midnight in an abandoned warehouse north of the city. The air was sharp with rust and cold metal. Franco swept the area, then left us in the idling black car. Through the windshield, Silvio waited, shoulders hunched, hands buried in his coat. I thought of him as a brother, Luca said quietly. I saved him, and he repaid me with her blood. Then make him talk, I said. Not with bullets, with fear. Luca stepped out, his shadow stretching long beneath the flickering light. The warehouse swallowed their voices, echoing off rusted walls. Silvio looked wrecked, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. He raised trembling hands. I didn't want her dead, I swear, Luca. I only moved the data to keep Victor quiet. I didn't know they'd kill Emily. But you knew they could, Luca said, voice like granite. I can fix this, Silvio stammered. I have Victor's location. Trade my life for his. You can end this, Luca, but you have to let me live. Why? Luca asked, dangerously calm. So you can betray me again? I have a wife, children. They'll kill them if I don't cooperate. Luca said nothing. I saw his fingers tighten around the gun. One twitch and it would be over. I stepped forward, forcing my voice steady. If he's telling the truth, killing him now is foolish. Do you want revenge or an end? He turned to me, torn between light and darkness. Finally, he lowered the gun. Talk, Silvio swallowed. Victor's in Chicago, Mirabelle Hotel penthouse. I have his schedule, his guards, everything. Just get my family out. Luca glanced at me. I nodded once. If he's right, this is our chance. When Silvio left, the silence felt heavier. Luca watched him disappear through the mist. If he's lying, then you'll get your shot, I said softly. But don't let rage destroy what Emily wanted you to protect. We returned to the mansion before dawn. The hall lights glowed faintly, painting ghosts across the walls. I poured Luca coffee and set it before him. He sat there, shoulders hunched, eyes hollow. I thought I controlled everything, he murmured. But Emily showed me I was just another puppet. So was I said. I spent my life running from her shadow. Turns out, some things live in your blood. I don't know what made the space between us dissolve. Exhaustion, grief, or the simple need for warmth in the cold. His hand brushed my cheek, hesitant but real. I didn't pull away. His gaze dropped to my lips, and then he kissed me, slow, deep, and unbearably human. The kind of kiss that tastes like pain and forgiveness all at once. When he finally pulled back, our breaths mingled in the dim light. If you stay, he whispered, you could die. I know. And you still want to? I met his eyes. We end this together. The sky over Seattle hung heavy and gray as we left the mansion, mist curling low over the pines by the lake. Neither of us spoke. The kiss from the night before still lingered, not tender but solemn, like a silent pact that neither of us could undo. When the car turned toward the industrial docks, I knew the real game had begun. Warehouse 12 sat behind a rusted fence, an old freight depot near the pier. The air smelled of salt, oil, and decay. Franco swept the perimeter, then stepped aside for us to enter. Inside, a single bulb flickered above, casting long, uneven shadows. Silvio waited at a table in the center, hands visible, face drawn tight. I brought what you wanted, he said, voice hoarse, eyes locked on Luca. Everything about Victor Krasniki, accounts, contacts, transactions. In exchange, I want one thing. Freedom, Luca said flatly. And protection for my family, Silvio added quickly. Yes, I betrayed you, but not for money. The Albanians threatened my wife and kids. I swear to God, I didn't know Emily would die. I studied him. The words sounded too practiced, too clean. I stepped closer to the laptop on the table. The screen glowed with hundreds of files and codes. It's all here? All of it, he said. If I die, the data goes straight to the FBI. I've set up an autosend. Don't test me, Clara. I glanced at Luca. His jaw tightened. You think I fear the FBI more than you? I think you're smart enough not to kill before you know what's at stake, Silvio said, meeting his gaze. You need Victor, not my corpse. The air in the warehouse felt dense, thick with salt and tension. I focused on the code, flashing across the screen, and frowned. This isn't right. What do you mean? Luca asked. The file structure doesn't match Victor's format. It's compressed, a decoy. He's holding the original somewhere else. Luca turned his eyes to Silvio, sharp and lethal. Is she right? Sweat gathered on Silvio's temple. I needed leverage, insurance, in case you double-cross me. And if I kill you before you trigger it, Luca said, his tone deadly calm. I stepped in, touching his arm. Don't, he's not bluffing. The trigger's biometric, heart rate. You kill him, the FBI gets everything. Luca's glare cut through the room. You plan well, Silvio. I plan to live, Silvio murmured, looking at me, desperate, pleading, human. I took a slow breath. Listen, we don't need him dead, not yet. We need the one giving orders, not another pawn. Luca's silence was long, heavy. His hands flexed once, then he lowered the gun. Fine, but if he lies again... I won't, Silvio interrupted. There won't be another chance. Luca nodded. I moved to the laptop, typing fast. I'll copy the files and set up a shadow link. We'll track every move he makes. Silvio smirked faintly. You're smarter than Emily. I froze, staring at him. She died because she trusted the wrong man. I won't. Minutes bled by. When I finished, I nodded. Done. Luca tossed him the car keys. Go. But you'll never know when I'm behind you. Silvio snatched the keys, forcing a shaky smile before walking into the fog. Do you believe him? I asked when he vanished. No, Luca said, stepping outside. His breath fogged in the cold air. But I believe you. I planted a tracker on his car, real-time feed. If he goes to Victor, we'll know. And if he doesn't? I'll make him, I said, my voice harder than I meant it to be. Luca studied me for a long moment. The steel in his eyes softened. You're playing a dangerous game, Clara. So are you, I said quietly. The difference is I stopped believing in safety a long time ago. A gust of wind swept through, carrying the sting of salt and the hum of distant ships. Far across the dock, lights shimmered on the water, fractured and shifting like 1,000 watching eyes. In my palm, the tracker's light blinked steadily, a heartbeat pulsing in the dark. I looked at Luca and whispered, it started. For 3 days after the dock meeting, I barely left my screen. The signal from Silvio's tracker pulsed like an electronic heartbeat, leading us from Seattle to Chicago, where it stopped at the Mirabelle Hotel, a tower of glass rising over the river. Victor Krasnicki was there, the name Emily had died chasing, and now the hunt was on. Luca stood beside me, inside the command van, the glow from the monitors cutting sharp angles across his face. He wore body armor, the black pistol at his hip gleaming under the blue light. Are we ready? Satellite feed confirms movement on the 45th floor. Victor's still in the penthouse, I said, fingers gliding over the interface. Emergency exits on the west side. If he runs, he'll head to the basement garage. He won't get that far, Luca replied. His strike team, 6 men, ex-military, precise and silent, moved like shadows through the building. I tapped into the hotel's security grid, blinding the infrared sensors for 2 minutes, just long enough for them to reach the elevator. Clara, watch the roof. Luca's voice came through the comm. I don't want surprises. I'm already watching you, I said quietly. The feed jolted as they reached the penthouse. The doors slid open. Darkness, curtains drawn. A long silence, then Luca's voice, low, hard. Clear, he's not here. I frowned and scanned the lower floors. A flicker of motion on the garage level caught my eye. A black SUV idling. Luca, he's escaping through the basement. West exit, 3 armed guards. Team 2, cut him off, Luca barked. But the map showed the truth. Victor was too close to the exit. I didn't think. I tore off my headset, shoved the van door open, and ran into the rain. Franco shouted after me, but I didn't stop. Every step echoed with Emily's name. If Victor escaped now, her death would mean nothing. The parking garage smelled of gas and metal. I saw him, Victor, heavyset, surrounded by 2 guards fumbling for the car door. I raised my Glock and fired at the steel pillar beside them. The gunshot cracked through the air, a burst of sparks lighting the dark. Victor froze, turning toward me. "Kill the engine," I shouted. "Don't move." The guards reacted fast. One fired back, the bullet slicing my shoulder in a flash of heat. I hit the concrete, rolled behind a car, heart pounding. Then came another volley, deeper, sharper. Luca's team. Gunfire roared through the garage, ricocheting off pillars. Smoke, glass exploding, the smell of rubber and blood. When I looked up, Luca had Victor pinned against the wall, gun pressed to his temple. The fight was over, but his eyes were wild. "You don't need to do this," I said, voice shaking. "He ordered Emily's death," Luca growled. "You want me to forgive that?" "No," I whispered, stepping closer. "I want you to survive it. Kill him now and the FBI buries us both. End the blood, don't feed it." Victor laughed, a wet, broken sound. "You don't have the guts, Luca. You pull that trigger, you die with me." Luca shoved him down, the gun steady. For a heartbeat, I saw everything in his eyes. Rage, guilt, grief, all colliding. I reached out, laid my hand over his, and said softly, "Not like this." He stared at me, breath shaking. Then, slowly, his finger lifted off the trigger. "Take him," he ordered. The guards grabbed Victor, cuffed him, dragged him toward the waiting van. "What will you do with him?" I asked. "Hand him to the neutrals. Interpol will take it from here. He'll talk." "And Silvio? His part's over." We left the garage just as dawn broke. The rain had stopped, leaving steam rising from the streets, catching the blue flash of incoming police lights. Luca sat beside me in silence, face unreadable, but something in his eyes had softened, tired, almost peaceful. "I thought you'd pull the trigger," I murmured. "So did I," he said. "But you're right. Emily didn't die so I could add another corpse to the pile." I leaned back, watching Chicago wake beneath the gray light. The hunt was over. But deep down, I knew. The silence that followed was only the calm before another storm. When Victor was taken away, Chicago's air was still damp and cold, the sky the color of ash. We didn't hand him to Interpol. Franco led the convoy west, into the outskirts, toward an abandoned military site. The gates opened, the car disappeared inside, and the steel doors closed behind him like a tomb. I stood outside, watching through the mist. "This is your secret prison." Luca didn't answer. He stared through the metal, voice low. "No one will find him, no lawyers, no courts, no exit." "So you won't kill him," I said quietly, "but you won't let him live either." "Justice," he murmured, "sometimes looks like silence." The words chilled me. I stepped closer. "No, Luca, this isn't justice. It's revenge wearing a mask. You're punishing him because you can't forgive yourself." He paused, jaw tightening. "You think I haven't asked myself that? If we give him to them, he walks free. I've seen it too many times. Emily can't have died for nothing." "And if she were alive," I pressed, "would she want this? She believed in truth, not cages." Luca's shoulders tensed. I saw his hands clench, his voice breaking when he spoke again. "You don't understand, Clara. I lost everything, her, my honor, my soul, and you." He turned, eyes shadowed but soft. You remind me I can still feel. I froze. The flickering light from the guard post painted his face in gold and shadow. Luca, I whispered, I'm not Emily's echo. I know, he said, honest, quiet. I love you, not because you look like her, but because you're the only one who stares into the dark and doesn't flinch. You make me believe there's a way out of it. I turned away, breath unsteady. Outside, the wind howled through the steel fences, a sound like the city exhaling. I didn't know if his words made me grateful or terrified. Love in this world was just another sharp edge in the dark. I don't even know if I believe in anything anymore, I said softly. When I saw Victor locked away, I realized I'm not so different from him. I've bent rules, broken laws, lied, and I don't feel sorry. That scares me. Luca's hand rested on my shoulder. Regret won't fix the past, but knowing where the line is, that's what keeps you human. That line's blurred, I whispered. We crossed it. Maybe, he said, eyes distant. But only those who cross it know how to rebuild it. Silence hung between us. In the distance, the city lights flickered faintly through fog. Victor was buried alive in his own darkness, and I wasn't sure I hadn't joined him. My hands felt cold, as if every keystroke, every code I'd written had left invisible stains. When we returned to the car, rain began to fall, soft, cleansing. Luca looked exhausted, hollow-eyed yet calmer. What now? I asked. Seattle, he said. Everything's in ruins, the company, the foundation. I have to rebuild. You'll walk back into the dark, I said quietly. He shook his head. No, I'm going to bring light back, if I can. I studied him, then nodded. I'll stay in Seattle, help you rebuild. He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, I saw hope flicker there. You're sure? I'm not sure of anything anymore, I said with a faint smile. That's why I should stay. We left Chicago as dawn broke. The highway shimmered with rain, the weak sun bleeding gold through the clouds. I watched the skyline fade into mist. Somewhere behind us, Victor lay forgotten. Emily had become memory, and for the first time, I wasn't running. Inside the car, Luca's hand brushed mine, not to hold, but to ask if I was still there. I answered without words, curling my fingers around his. We didn't speak again. We didn't have to. After walking through hell, the only thing left to hold on to is the hand that chose to stay. 2 weeks after leaving Chicago, Seattle greeted us with rain, thin, silvery threads weaving across a gray sky. The city looked unchanged, cold, damp, melancholy. But beneath that stillness, I could feel something new taking root. Luca had returned to his old office on the 32nd floor, once the nerve center of Moretti Technologies. The monitors that used to pulse with illicit transactions now glowed with clean data. The change wasn't just in the system, it was in the man sitting before it. I worked beside him, laptop open, tracking each step of dismantling the shell companies that once laundered millions. The Zurich account's been closed, I said. Next is the Singapore fund. I've reassigned their staff to independent audit. Good, Luca murmured, signing off another document. Every time I delete an account, it feels like cutting away a piece of my own rot. There's still plenty left to cut, I said softly, half a smile. We worked in near silence for days, the sound of rain against glass filling the gaps words couldn't. At night, I'd glance over and see him, no longer the cold, calculating man I'd met, but someone trying, one breath at a time, to be whole again. His eyes still carried their shadows, but they no longer consumed him. One afternoon, sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks. Luca looked up and said, "There's somewhere I need to go." I knew exactly where. We drove north to the cemetery overlooking Puget Sound. Emily's grave lay between two maples, simple and white, the inscription carved with quiet grace, "Emily Voss. She saw the world in colors others feared to touch." I knelt, placing a bouquet of white lilies on the stone. The air smelled of wet earth and rain. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I hated you for so long, for being brave when I couldn't, for chasing truth even when it killed you. But I get it now. You weren't trying to be fearless. You just didn't know how to stand still when something was wrong." I took a shaky breath. "I can't bring you back, but I'll try to live right, because you can't." When I rose, Luca was kneeling beside me. His hand rested on the marble, trembling slightly. "You were right," he murmured, speaking as if she could hear. "I chose control over truth. I thought power could keep you safe. I was wrong. If I had another chance, I'd choose differently." He laid a single lily beside mine. For a moment, the world held still. The man who had once lived among corruption, now kneeling before the woman who had taught him loss. Not guilt, not self-pity, just the quiet surrender of someone who'd finally stopped running. We stood there for a long while, silence settling like fog. The sky turned pale lavender, and a salt wind swept in from the sound. Luca turned to me, voice low. "You know the strange thing?" "What?" "I used to think light erased darkness. Now I think it just learns how to live with it." I smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the only way people survive." "And you?" he asked. "After all this, where will you go?" "I'm already there," I said, looking toward the city across the bay. Seattle's never been home, but maybe now it could be. As we left the cemetery, the sunset spread across the water, gold melting into violet. Through the car window, I saw our two bouquets, white lilies side by side, catching the last light. Maybe that was what reconciliation really was. Not between the living and the dead, but between the pieces of ourselves we'd spent years denying. The city rose ahead, its skyline flickering through mist, each window a fragile but persistent light. I rolled the window down, let the cold air wash over me. A slow piano melody played from the radio, quiet and clear. Luca glanced at me and smiled, a small, tired smile, but real. "We're starting over," he said. "No," I murmured. "We're just continuing, this time without running." The car moved through the fading gold of dusk, the horizon glowing silver where the sea met sky. I closed my eyes, letting the wind touch my face, and somewhere deep inside, I heard Emily's voice again, soft, certain, eternal. "Light doesn't erase the dark, Clara. It just learns how to live with it." 9 months later, Seattle had changed. The winter rain still fell, soft and endless, but somehow gentler, like the city itself was learning to breathe again. I stood before the mirror in our apartment, hands resting over my belly, 6 months along. The baby shifted, a small reminder that life, after everything, had found a way back. Luca entered in a black tuxedo, the kind that fit him too perfectly. The sharpness in him had softened over time. His smile was small, steady. "You okay?" "Better than ever," I said, fixing his tie. "You look like you're about to do something crazy." "Maybe I am," he murmured. That night, the Four Seasons Seattle glowed with light. The grand ballroom was filled with white lilies, Emily's favorite. The first charity gala hosted by the Echo Foundation had drawn politicians, artists, and business leaders alike. But none of it mattered as much as the fact that Luca stood there, not hiding, not afraid, alive in the light. Across the room, he greeted Elias Romano, his former associate turned successor at Moretti Technologies. "Make tech a shield, not a weapon," Luca had told him. "We used it wrong for too long." Music swelled, glasses clinked, laughter mingled with piano notes. I sat in the corner, hand over my stomach, feeling the baby move. Luca came to me. "Tired?" "Not yet," I said. "But you're up next." He smiled. "I'll keep it short." When the spotlight found him, Luca took the stage, not as the man he once was, but as someone reborn through loss. "Thank you for being here tonight," he began. "For years, I believed power came from control. I was wrong. Real power is in the ability to change, and in the people who forgive us while we're still learning how." He paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd before landing on me. I lost everything once, someone I loved, someone I failed, and a part of myself. Tonight, I have the chance to begin again, so I want to spend the rest of my life living for what's right, and with the person who taught me how. Applause rose. I felt the air shift before I understood why. Luca stepped off the stage, walked straight toward me, and knelt down in front of everyone. The world blurred. He opened a small black velvet box. Inside, a simple platinum ring catching the light. "Clara," he said, voice low but certain, "I can't rewrite the past, but I can choose the future. Will you walk it with me? Not running, not hiding, but living together in the light?" I couldn't speak. I nodded, tears blurring everything. He smiled, a real smile, unguarded, and slid the ring onto my finger. The room erupted in applause and music, the sound of beginnings. Later, Elias raised his glass. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Luca." "Let's hope I can stay," Luca replied, laughter touching his voice. I leaned against him, hand on my belly. "You already have." When the gala ended, the hall emptied, leaving the scent of lilies and candle smoke. I stood by the window, overlooking the city, lights shimmering like rivers of stars. Down below, unnoticed, a silver car sat parked across the street. Inside, a man in a dark cap watched the window. On the passenger seat, a laptop glowed. Project Sylv 2.0 active. Luca came up behind me, arms circling my waist. Emily would have smiled if she could see us. "I know," I said softly. "And maybe our child should carry her name." He kissed my temple. A new beginning. Outside, the city burned with light, millions of small suns reflected on the water. Yet somewhere in that sea of brightness, a shadow lingered, patient, unseen. I rested my head against Luca's chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and human. And I realized that light never truly destroys the dark. It just learns how to live beside it. And sometimes that's enough. The gala ended in music and soft light. But peace never lasts long in our world. Guests were beginning to leave when I stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer across my rounded belly like a fragile promise. Luca was still speaking with donors on the far side of the room, his smile calm and genuine, the kind of smile that made me believe, for a heartbeat, that the darkness had finally ended. Then I saw him. A man near the catering bar, standing too still. His eyes were cold, focused, his right hand brushing the inside of his jacket again and again. The posture was unmistakable, trained, ready. My pulse quickened. When he tilted his head slightly, A faint voice came through a small earpiece. The language hit me like a slap. Albanian. Koha tani perfendimi. Time, now, the end. I texted Elias, suspicious man, near catering, black jacket, speaking Albanian. But before I could finish typing, the man drew his weapon. I shouted, "Luca!" Chaos exploded. The gunshot shattered the music. Glass rained down from the chandeliers, and the crowd screamed. Luca spun toward me, instincts razor sharp, pushing me to the floor behind a table, just as a bullet tore through the air, grazing the curtain where we'd stood seconds ago. Elias appeared out of nowhere, tackling the shooter. Another shot went off, echoing through the marble hall. People ran, heels clattering, voices breaking. I crawled from under the table. Smoke, shattered glass, overturned chairs. Luca was beside me, checking my pulse with trembling hands. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," I managed. "You?" He shook his head, voice rough. "Stay down." Elias wrestled the gun from the attacker's grip as security rushed in. The man's face twisted in fury, blood on his lip, eyes burning with hate. I froze, the tattoo on his neck, an Albanian wolf. I'd seen that symbol before, in Emily's encrypted files. Luca strode forward, fury barely contained. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood, laughing. "Family never forgets. Victor may be buried, but our blood isn't." I caught Luca's arm before he could strike. "Don't," I whispered. "Not now." Elias handed the gun to hotel security, who restrained the man. As they dragged him away, he muttered something, voice low but sharp. "Silv eshtayala. Silv is alive." I met Luca's eyes. We both understood. Silv, the code name from Emily's journal, the traitor, the ghost we thought was gone. If he was alive, this was only the beginning. When police arrived, Luca gave the bare minimum. An intruder, an attempted shooting, nothing more. I saw fear flicker beneath his composure, not for himself, but for me, for the child, for everything we'd built out of ashes. When the crowd finally cleared, Elias returned, a cut on his shoulder, face pale. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes, thanks to you." He shook his head. "That wasn't random. Someone planned this." Luca took my hand, his grip tight. "I thought I'd escaped," he murmured, voice breaking. "I thought the past could stay buried, but maybe no one ever really leaves it." I pressed my palm against his, feeling the warmth of life still there. No one escapes the past, Luca, but we can learn to move through it. Outside, sirens wailed, blue and red lights flashing against the glass. Rain began to fall again, soft but insistent. I leaned against him, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne and smoke. Our reflections shimmered on the marble floor, two silhouettes standing at the edge of darkness once more. But this time we were not alone. Outside the window, Seattle's sky glowed pale gold with early spring light. The first rays of sun, after weeks of rain, slipped through the hospital blinds, trembling across the floor like the first breaths of a new day. I lay there, exhausted, breath uneven, skin damp with sweat. And then, through the hum of machines and soft footsteps, came another sound, small, sharp, pure. My daughter's first cry. The doctor placed her on my chest, tiny, warm, fragile as a new bud. I stared at her, speechless, tears blurring everything. Light poured over her skin, and it felt as though she'd been born straight from the sun. Luca stood beside me, his hand gripping mine, trembling. In his eyes, I saw happiness, fear, gratitude, all at once. "She has your eyes," I whispered. "No," Luca said softly. "She has yours," I smiled. "Her name?" He looked down at us and said quietly, "Emily Rose Moretti." The name settled between us like a prayer. "Then she'll carry light," I murmured, "where darkness once lived." The room glowed warm, a mirror image of the story's beginning. Where once there was rain and a coffin, now there was sunlight and the sound of life. Emily's death had opened the story. Her namesake's birth closed it. In that balance, I understood something simple and whole. Life always returns, exactly when it must. 3 days later, Luca drove us north to the cemetery overlooking the bay. I watched from the car, still weak, as rain misted the glass in soft golden drops. He carried a small wooden plaque, engraved with the words, "Aunt Emily, forever loved." Kneeling beside the white stone, he pressed the plaque into the soil and laid down a bouquet of white lilies. He stayed there a long time, head bowed, wind tugging at his hair. I couldn't hear his words, but I knew he was speaking. About the journey, about forgiveness, about the woman who had made both of us better by her absence. At last, Luca pulled a small photograph from his pocket. Baby Emily Rose, asleep, tiny fists curled tight. He set it by the headstone, his voice barely above the wind. "She carries your name, Emily, not to replace you, but to remind us that every soul deserves a second chance. I promise to live right this time, and I will." From the car, tears blurred my sight. The wind stirred the lilies, white petals trembling in sunlight, as if someone invisible had brushed past. Maybe Emily heard. Maybe she was smiling, somewhere between the clouds and the sea. When Luca returned, the scent of rain and earth followed him. I took his hand, cradling our sleeping child in the other. "See," I whispered, "the sky isn't gray anymore." He smiled, kissing my forehead. "No," he said, "it's just learned how to shine its own way." As the car rolled away, sunlight spilled across the highway. In the rearview mirror, the little plaque stood among the grass, glowing faintly. "Forever loved." Baby Emily stirred, her lips twitching in sleep, and somewhere deep inside, I heard her namesake's voice again. Not mourning, but peace. Light doesn't erase the dark, Clara. It just learns how to live with it. And for the first time, I believed her. Time moved like ripples across the lake. Quiet, constant, widening a little more each day. Since Emily Rose's birth, our lives had changed in ways neither of us could have imagined. The old wounds didn't vanish. They simply healed by learning how to live beside them. The house by the lake, once a refuge of fear, had become a place where mornings began with light instead of shadows. And one afternoon, as sunlight stretched across the water, I realized we had come full circle. Back to the beginning, only different this time. The lake is calm, its surface a mirror of blue sky, and sunlight, rippling like breath. I stand on the wooden porch of our lakeside house, the same place that was once a fortress of secrets, now a home filled with laughter and warmth. The windows are open, the scent of pine drifts in with the wind. Our daughter runs along the porch, a paper boat in her hand, her laughter rising like music. Luca sits on the lower steps, sleeves rolled, watching her with that look, half worry, half wonder. The hands that once held a gun now sign donation papers for survivors. 6 months ago, he founded Echo Foundation, an organization that helps victims of cybercrime. The name came from something he once said, "Everything we do leaves an echo. The choice is whether it returns in darkness or in light." I've returned to teaching at the University of Washington, digital ethics and cybersecurity. When I look at my students, I think of Emily, who gave her life to prove that truth still matters. I keep her coded notebook in my desk drawer, not for answers, but as a reminder that light doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from remembering without fear. This afternoon, Luca calls me outside. The lake glows silver under the setting sun. "It's so still," he says. "Still," I answer, "but beneath it, the currents never sleep, just like our past." He smiles faintly. "Then maybe that's why we have to live with it instead of running." Our daughter's laughter breaks the silence. "Mommy, can I float my boat?" "Careful, Emily Rose," I call. She kneels by the water, placing her paper boat gently on the surface. A breeze catches it, and it drifts out, small and brave, across the ripples. Watching her, I think, this is us. Damaged, maybe, but still moving, still afloat. Luca's arm wraps around me. "I thought I'd die here," he murmurs. "Never imagined I'd live here or be a father." "Maybe that's how the past forgives you," I say softly. He shakes his head. "No, you did." The sun sinks lower, turning gold to rose, then violet. We sit together, his heartbeat steady against my shoulder, the sound of water soft below. Emily Rose chases her boat along the shore, laughter echoing across the lake. This house, once a place of shadows, now beats with life, the rhythm of our rebirth. As dusk falls, I stare at the water. It holds everything: death, forgiveness, memory, and something that feels like grace. I whisper to no one and to everyone. The lake is calm, but beneath it, the currents never sleep, just like our past. A wind stirs, scattering light across the surface like fragments of memory. Luca leans closer. "Thank you," he says quietly, "for proving that we could live again." I turn to him. "We already have, Luca, from the ashes." Emily Rose runs back to us, muddy feet, sunlight tangled in her hair. I lift her, feel her tiny heart thudding against mine, and realize that every loss had led us here, to this breath, this moment. I rest my head on Luca's shoulder. The lake reflects our silhouettes, 3 shapes bound by light. And I finally understand that our story has come full circle, from darkness to dawn, from ruin to peace. Our story began with a funeral and ends with a heartbeat, the soft echo beneath the lake, proof that love can grow from the ashes.